you gotta read the sign to see if you can bring your gun in, basically. Welcome to America. Hey guys, welcome back to the Girl Gun London channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaylin. I'm an American who's lived in the UK for almost 10 years, and I'm tired of my intro. So if you have a suggestion for a new intro, leave it below. The basics are, I'm an American as evidenced by my accent. I typically live in the UK. I have for the past 10 years, but right now I'm in America, and actually I'm in one of my childhood bedrooms. I have divorced parents, so I have multiple childhood bedrooms, but this is one of them. And I have to say, the natural light for filming in Florida is so much better than my room in England. People get very offended when I make these very factual statements like, there's more space in America than England, or the natural light in Florida is better than the natural light in England. And this is not meant to be offensive or a jab at my home in the UK or at any of you Brits out here. It's just a fact. So I'm enjoying the natural light. It is not entirely sunny. There are a few clouds in the sky, so you know, we'll see if it feels like England anytime soon. Probably not, because we are in the depths of a Florida summer, which is an entirely different beast than anything you'll ever experience in England, and I don't necessarily mean that in a good way. Anyway, so in this video, I thought that I would talk about some of the culture shock I've experienced being back in the US, things that I'm just not used to anymore, or that I've noticed about my surroundings that I wouldn't have noticed when I was living here, but now that I live in the UK and am coming back to visit, I'm definitely noticing. Okay, so the first weird thing about America that I'm noticing is the roads are so straight. They just go on for miles and miles and miles without making a turn. This is what makes an American road trip so much fun, because there's not as much stress involved in getting to your destination, because basically you just get on the highway and you go like 700 miles and you don't make any turns and your car just goes straight. We use cruise control here in the States a lot because you're just going straight. But that is really weird to me coming from the UK where we've got the roundabouts, you're making turns, like the roads themselves, even if you're not turning off, the roads are turning. So yeah, the straight roads here are definitely weird. However, it's not all straight roads. If you go to the Northeast, particularly somewhere like Boston, I know Boston is definitely not straight roads, and that's because it was set up by the Brits back in the day. But places like Florida that, you know, suburban Florida, it's all straight roads. So yeah, that's gonna be number one, the straight roads. You can see it even when you're landing on the plane. You just look down and you just see roads going on forever, straight as can be, and that is my first culture shock. Okay, so my second culture shock, or reverse culture shock, I should say, because this is my home culture, there are flags everywhere, like American flags everywhere, on homes, everywhere, at businesses, everywhere, outside of businesses. To have like a school in the UK flying the Union Jack out front, I've never seen it. I don't know if it happens. Let me know if it does. But we love the flag in the US. It is seriously, you drive down the road, you go flag, 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 everywhere. So that's a kind of reverse culture shock that I've been noticing, is all of the flags everywhere. And I've talked about this in another video, but American homes, like we do sometimes have the American flag out front. That is very popular. People might also do like the state flag. I feel like it's getting more popular to do the Florida state flag, but I'm like, most people are in Florida are from somewhere else, so it's a little bit weird. But places like Texas that have like a lot of state pride, you'll see the state flag, and you'll also see just like random flags that say things like Happy Halloween, or Summer's here, or It's fall, y'all, which is totally an American phrase that I have learned since being here. Fall/autumn in the US basically starts like July because people are so pumped for Halloween. But back to what I was saying about flags, you could fly a flag, like a house flag that says one of these phrases just everywhere. Just any American street, just drive down it and you'll see all of the flags. Okay, the next reverse culture shock on a more serious note that kind of freaks me out are the signs about whether you can or cannot bring your firearm into that particular location. So I have seen signs on something like the Walmart that says, kindly do not bring your firearm into this establishment. Some things have no signs. Some things are like, no concealed firearms. Like, it's a very different world. Constant reminder that people here could possibly all around me like be armed, and when you're in traffic you're like, do not honk at that person because they might have a gun. Totally different than in the UK, where I can walk around freely without worrying if someone is going to like lose their temper in traffic and have a bad situation. So that is definitely one of those things. These are one of the downsides about America that I definitely feel safer walking around in the UK, not needing to worry about whether the pub accepts my firearm or not, because guess what? It doesn't, because no one has one. So that is a culture shock. Happens to me every time I come back here. Again, didn't even think about it for 1 second until I left the US. But yeah, you gotta read the sign to see if you can bring your gun in, basically. Welcome to America. Okay, so my next reverse culture shock is about everybody going out to eat. And also, as I'm saying this completely unrelated, I feel like the actual Florida sun is making me very washed out. So maybe this lighting isn't even the best. Maybe I don't know, maybe the English lighting is better, but I'm definitely feeling like it's hitting me hard. I'm looking a little bit like a ghost. I actually have gotten a tan since being here, but you can't see it in this video. So anyway, everyone goes out to eat. It is so much more popular in the US to go out to eat on a regular basis than in the UK. And by regular basis, I'm talking about multiple times per week going out for lunch, for dinner, for breakfast. I feel like in the UK, people cook a lot more. People cook here, but not to the extent that they do. Like in the UK, I feel like the default is we're staying in. Whereas in America, I feel like the default is kind of like, we're not entirely, like it's 50-50. The default is not necessarily that we are staying in to eat and cooking here. It's kind of a toss-up. Whereas in the UK, you'd make specific plans in advance. We're going out on Friday. It's a special occasion. Americans we go out to eat all of the time. I feel like we do have a lot more like restaurant options. And I'll qualify this because I know people in the UK are going to be like, what the heck? Like, America just has Olive Garden and Outback, which, by the way, I'm not knocking because I like those places. But I feel like in the UK, it's very, like, you go to the pub, or maybe you go to, like, an Italian place, or maybe, like, a Thai place. The kind of, like, catch-all family restaurants, I don't actually feel like the chains are that good in the UK, or B, that they're that popular, especially around where we are, about an hour outside of London. I just feel like we don't have as many options. Here in Florida, at least, you have just got endless restaurant options. I'm not saying anything about the quality of the food versus the UK. I'm just saying I feel like we have more options, and that makes sense because I feel like there is more of a market for people going out to eat here. Okay, the next reverse culture shock is the four-way stop. So we have intersections in the US a lot more commonly. Is that a phrase? A lot more. They are a lot more common than like a roundabout. I've talked before about like there are roundabouts in some parts of the US, but not here where I am in Florida. We don't understand roundabouts. We have intersections. So you could all be stopped at an intersection with the red lights not going anywhere. So that definitely makes my husband annoyed when he's here because he's trying to like redesign the traffic to be more efficient based on the UK style. But in general, even if you're not at a stoplight, you could be at a four-way stop intersection with 4 stop signs. And in that case, whoever gets to the stop sign, you go in order of who stopped first. So if you and another car are coming from opposite sides, you've both got stop signs, you both stop, and whoever got there first is the one who is allowed to go first. If you get there at like exactly the same time, you're gonna have to look at them and be like a you go, no you go kind of situation. I have never seen this in the UK. doesn't fit with the way the roads are there. So the four-way stop is a funny kind of traffic reverse culture shock for me every time I come to America. Okay, the next culture shock, and for me, this is in a good way, is the amount of space in the US. The parking spots here, I swear it would fit like 3 British cars. Everything, particularly in the suburbs, is just massive. The roads are so wide. Again, plenty of parking, basically all free. Thank God. That is one thing about the UK that I cannot get on board with, how we have to pay for parking practically everywhere. Here, so much easier. You go to I can't think of, if you go to like a city, yes, you'll have to pay for parking, worry about parking. Here in the suburbs, absolutely not. Parking is free everywhere. You go to the hospital, it's free, it's amazing. But this wasn't about that. This was about the space. So yeah, we have more land in the US. Again, this is not a knock on England. I prefer having more space, but England can't help the size. So, please don't be offended, British people, by me saying I prefer the space in America. I just grew up with this. I feel like I've just got room to spread out, to run around. Not that I run around anywhere, but it doesn't feel quite so claustrophobic as sometimes it can in the UK. And this even relates down to the size of houses. I showed you guys the size of Emily's apartment, or at least the size of like her guest bathroom, which I feel like is basically half the size of my 2 up, 2 down UK terraced house. There's just a lot of space in America that I'm not used to having in the UK. I do really like it, but that is another reverse culture shock. And the next reverse culture shock, as these rays of sun, I didn't actually set this up to like make anyone jealous of this Florida sun beaming into my room, but as somebody who does suffer from seasonal depression and the UK winters, I'm soaking it up as long as I can. So the next thing is the sheer amount of selection. America just has a lot of options. We like having our options. You go to the grocery store and there are like 100 different types of cereal as opposed to maybe like 10 in the UK. And I do think this is like a cultural difference. So I'm not saying that one is better than the other. We like our options. On the menu, when you go somewhere, we like having 50 options as opposed to like 5 or 10 of like the best meals. We want 50 options. It might not be like great options, but we prefer to have 50 of them as opposed to 5. In America, bigger is better, more options. So even when you like make a decision here about what kind of bread to buy, it's just crazy how many options that there are. Okay, so the second to last reverse culture shock thing I've experienced, as always, is tipping in America. So tipping in America is very, very common. It's expected. It's not necessarily, you do it for good service, but you do it anyway. So if you get good service, you might give an even greater tip. But if you have a waiter or waitress at all, you tip. It relates to them not being paid enough. They're not paid a living wage. It's hugely problematic and a lot different than the UK, where they are paid a living wage and then you might tip for like really good service on top of that. So I'm not arguing against or for tipping or anything, but tipping in the US is what you do, and it can add like quite a lot onto the end of your check or bill. The amount that something costs just always costs 15 to 20%, kind of 20% more because of that tip that you are expected to leave. So that's something that I have stopped taking into account in the UK when I'm ordering or thinking about the final cost of going out to eat. Totally different in the US. You need to account for that extra money for the tip. Speaking of extra money that you need in the US, the final reverse culture shock that I'm experiencing is because the price of something on the shelf is not the final price. Why? Because we have something that we call sales tax, which is not baked into the price on the shelf. I think the reason for this, I'm almost 99% sure, is because sales tax varies by county, which are relatively small areas. So the sales tax in my county could be 7%, but the sales tax in the next county 10 minutes away could be 6%. Different states have different things. And so when you go to a Target or a Walmart and you're shopping and you see something costs $9.99, that is not the final price. And I forget that living in the UK, when the VAT and any kind of tax is already baked in, you should expect to go to the checkout, or the till as they would say in the UK, and you're going to have to pay extra on top of what you thought it was going to cost because you haven't accounted for that sales tax. There are certain things that aren't taxed. There are certain states that have different amount of taxes. So again, this is not like an all-encompassing, this is exactly how much to expect everywhere you go. But definitely don't be surprised when you go to pay somewhere. If you thought it was going to be $20 and it's like, $21 or whatever the increase is, it's because that sales tax is not included in the price on the shelf. It's included when you check out. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video and really following me along on my journey. I know a lot of you have been around since the early days of January, 6 months ago, seems so long ago, of this channel, and me traipsing through the fields near my house in the UK all the way to applying for my visa, my indefinite leave, and citizenship, and finally being able to come and visit the US. Thank you guys so much for being here and for watching, and I'll see you next time.